Hi, so in this video we're going to look at making some tech house style analog bass sounds using U He's Diva, and I've got a little drum loop here, sort of jacking tech drum loop, and I've got some MIDI programmed in, and I'm just going to load an instance of Diva in here. And the reason I would use Diva for a sound like this is because this U He stuff just sounds, I guess, more analog than most of the other soft synths, and if you want that sort of techie style bass sound, I'm going to make a bit of a chord style bass hook in here, and Diva's just perfect for it. It just sounds so warm, so analog, and at the moment it's default patch. We don't really want to use that. What I want to do is, if I go to patches over here and then go to templates, there's a variety of different, these are like the initialized preset options that we have here, these like inits here, but they're different types of initialize. So they will initialize stuff with different settings, so initialize for a Jupiter 6 or a Juno 60, and because basically what Diva is, it's not modeling one individual hardware, classic piece of hardware. It's a kind of mix and match of a variety of different classic pieces of hardware. So at the moment it looks a bit like a mini Moog, but if I went and loaded in this initialized Juno 60, it looks a lot more like a Juno, this kind of section up here. So you can actually select whether you have these different types of voltage controlled oscillators, DCOs, digital oscillators, and the same with the filters. You know, a ladder filter, which is the mini Moog or Moog style filter, different types filter like the Juno filter, and the same with the envelopes, ADS, analog, digital envelopes. So you just build your own hybrid synths in here, classic, using different sections of classic pieces of hardware. So if I go to this initialize or init mini mono, I get this kind of like a sawtooth preset, and it's looking like the mini Moog up here, and we've got 3 oscillators, which is vital because I want to do a chord, sort of techie chord sound with this, so this is perfect. And I'm going to change some of this over here. I'm going to change these to analog envelopes. I just prefer programming with the ADSR type thing. I'm going to keep the ladder filter in there because that's quite a nice sounding filter, and this mixer section obviously modelled on the mini Moog with the feedback control and the noise, and that's going to be important for our analog style sound. And down here, this thing is important to note as well, because Diva is a real CPU hog. So if you're struggling with the CPU, and you can actually change this drop down here, accuracy, you can change this to draft, and as long as offline accuracy you convert to best, which means that you're going to save CPU when you're working on a project, but when you're bouncing down to audio, it's going to preserve that audio quality there. So I don't actually have much going on in this project, so the CPU should be fine, but when you come into mixing something down and you've got 20 audio instruments and all your drum tracks and all your plugins, you might want to look at something like that to save a bit of CPU. So simple sawtooth at the moment. What we can do in this oscillator section is oscillator 2 is turned down at the moment, so turn that up, and we've got a stacked saw, and also turn, actually let's just program this for starters. So the waveform of oscillator 1, I can actually get a bit of pulse going by switching it over to some of these pulse waves here. So halfway over to the pulse from the saw. Keep the range at 8 there, so you can take your oscillators up and down an octave here. Keep it as 8. Now let's bring in oscillator 2. Keep this as a saw, but let's detune, let's push this up by 3 semitones. Maybe take the volume down of oscillator 1 a bit. and now oscillator 3. Let's turn this up. And what I'd like to do for that classic techie chord is take the semitone up of oscillator 3 by +7 semitones. And we can't actually do that here, we can only go to +5. So what I'm going to have to do is take it up an octave and go -5 semitones, and that is the same as going up 7 semitones. So we've got that classic techno chord. And if you look here, it's quite hard to get it exactly on the number, but if you're scrolling up and down, up here it gives you the tune readout, so I know I'm exactly on 7 there, and this one 3 point, I'm exactly on 3 +3 semitones. So we could detune these even slightly, couldn't we, for a bit more of a analog feel. Going to bring a bit of noise in now as well. That sort of noise is kind of vital really when you're sort of doing those analog style techie chords and techie analog sounds, a bit of feedback. So this routes the output of the synth back into itself, which is one of the quite famous features of the Mini Moog synth. And let's look down here as well, there's voices, let's stack them up a little bit. Okay, we need to shape this sound a little bit. It's a bit brash and harsh at the moment, so I'm going to bring this cutoff down. And by default, we've already got an envelope mapped here to our cutoff frequency, although the modulation amount is not turned up. So if we turn this up, we're actually applying the envelope modulation to the filter, and it's envelope 2. So this envelope 2 is controlling the cutoff frequency now. And envelope 1 is the amplitude. So I'm going to push the decay up on envelope 1, take this sustain down a bit of release. And let's tweak this filter envelope, slow attack, a bit more sustain, a bit more release. You can sync the oscillators here if you wanted to, but I don't really want to sync them because it takes away that sort of analog feel. Also, what we could do, if we look at our hook, played this in live, there's some variations on the velocity. So if I push this velocity slider up here, this means that the filter envelope is now velocity sensitive. So we're getting different amounts of filter modulation happening, envelope modulation happening on the filter depending on the velocity of the note being played. And what could be quite cool, you can automate this cutoff frequency. Emphasis, which is resonance, turn a bit of this up. And we've got a classic techie chord. What I might do here, highlight all of these notes on our MIDI region, go down to here, edit, drop down menu, trim, and force legato, just so the notes only kind of carry on. They not overlap, but they only end when the next note begins. So now when you open up the filter, you get that nice sort of solid tone, there's no gaps in the notes. And now for a bit of kind of production really. So that's a nice chord, but there's not loads of low end in here. So what would be cool as well to get this sound really nice and wide. So if I open up an instance of Ozone 5, and add some really nice width on here. So it's nice and wide. And this is what I love about Diva, is that you can get sounds really nice and wide, and then whenever I go to my utility gain and then collapse the output to mono, don't lose any of the sound to phase. A lot of synths do, but that means it's going to work in that mono. Some club systems are in mono, some tablets and devices are in mono, so you want your mixes to work in both mono and stereo. And that synth sound still sounds great in mono and nice and wide in stereo. So time to layer this synth up. So I'm going to duplicate it over here, copy these MIDI notes down. It's set on this duplicated instance of Diva. I'm going to take the octave of the notes down by 1. So I'm going to take the whole riff down by 1 octave and take that stereo imaging off. So this is like the subbier bass, so the low end. Mix some of these oscillators a little bit so that can sit underneath. So let's EQ this and just use a Logic channel EQ. Just take all the highs off. So this is providing the low end, bit of body. And this is the high end, the top, so we could EQ this accordingly and just sweep the lows out. So these two synths are playing ball with each other. And then this instance of Diva, make sure we're on the right one, is the one that you can just start going crazy with the automation. And you could even, going into the red there a little bit, on this instance we could bus in some reverb, and I'm going to use one of my save channel strips here. Bit of Valhalla vintage verb. And let's set up another bus and add a bit of delay. Logic's tape delay should probably do okay here. Okay, so some nice stuff, some nice analog techie stuff there using U He's Diva. I hope you enjoyed that tutorial and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.